All right, I see a bunch of people already here. Let's go ahead and get started here. Ryan Dosen here with Host Merchant Services, Director of Sales, also joined by Chris Clements today, our VP of Sales. We're here to talk about some stuff that a lot of you have been asking about for a long time. It's a good thing for us to revisit now, talking today about dual pricing, surcharge, and cash discount. Before we get into that, here again at Host, your success as independent sales agents is our number one priority. Also, delivering an amazing experience for your merchants is also one of our top priorities here. We're committed to bringing you all and your merchants exceptional support, dedicated guidance, fast responses, real solutions so you can get your merchants up and running fast and keep them for the long haul. You and your merchants have come to enjoy and expect 24/7 US-based technical support. You agents have personal relationship managers that know your business and are able to help you achieve streamlined merchant approvals, get your clients up and running fast, and focus on building your book of business. Here at Host, you also have access to a fairly unmatched selection of payment technologies, physical devices from companies like Valor, Deja Vu, Ingenico, Swipe Simple, and more. You also have access to a ton of different software, gateway technologies, including our Cloud Manager software that a lot of you have taken advantage of. Still providing free software forever for your merchants, a tremendous value add for those of you that are new here. We've had some webinars in the past. If you subscribe to and take a look at our YouTube channel, you can see this video will be live probably there in about a week. And we also have all of our previous videos on there as well. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and hop in here. We're going to be talking today and for the next few weeks, couple weeks at least, on surcharging, dual pricing, and cash discount. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, we'll go ahead and start from the beginning. So again, this session today, as well as the two that we have planned coming up on surcharge, dual pricing, and cash discount, we're trying to offer you guys as a part of the Sales Trenches series. A lot of you have been here for several of these videos. Again, solution-based selling in the real world. Our goal here is to give you all the information, tools, and guidance necessary to get out into the trenches and win deals. We're talking about real world conversations here, real world things that you're having to face out there in order to win deals. Okay. A lot of questions we've received from you all, especially recently regarding and around surcharge, dual pricing, and cash discount. Again, today's session is going to be part one of a three-part series. Today, we're focusing on, again, giving a nice overview of, what is surcharging, dual pricing versus cash discount? How are they different? What are some of the requirements? What are some things you need to look out for when you have merchants interested or when you're interested in pitching it? Next week, the plan is to get into more of the technical component. So again, laying the foundation this week. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at which processors, terminals, and technology make it possible to use any one of these three systems, which are the best, which aren't going to be able to provide a good solution for your merchants, and also take a look into some different nuances, including some things around debit, which we're going to talk a little bit around today. Then part three, a couple of weeks from today, the goal is to focus on selling it. Okay, so again, overall goal here is to help you all sell more, to help you all win more business out there in the field. And so, again, we're laying the foundation for a couple of weeks, giving you some things to watch out for, some things to be aware of. And then part three, we're going to talk about how you actually pitch this, how you actually get in there and win deals with one of these programs. All right, so again, surcharging, dual pricing, cash discount. A lot of times these terms are used interchangeably. Sometimes someone will refer to cash discount when they're actually referring to surcharging or dual pricing and some combination in there. Okay. A lot of agents ask about them. Terms are used interchangeably and oftentimes incorrectly. And so that can create confusion both for the agents and especially for the merchants, right? Like if you use the wrong term and then your merchant goes home and does a little bit of research on it, if you say cash discount, you're really talking about surcharging. You can create some confusion there, and that's not going to create a great experience for the merchants, and it might actually cause you to not win the deal. They might think you don't know what you're talking about or that you weren't being truthful or complete in your information that you're giving them. Okay. So again, today the foundation, we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page as to what these things are. Again, it's educational, not prescriptive. We're not telling you which program to sell. We just want, first of all, for you to make sure that you understand each one and that you're using the terms correctly when you're out there in the field. Okay. So all three of these come down to who's going to actually absorb the card processing cost. Okay, so for those of you that are unaware, surcharging, cash discount, dual pricing, basically merchants are, somebody has to pay the roughly 2 to 4% that's going to go back to the credit card companies. Okay, that 2 to 4% can certainly add up. It may not sound like a ton for those of you that are new to this, but that 2 to 4% can be quite significant. Okay, so we ran an analysis the other day, and it was like, okay, if the merchant is able to, let's say, find a way to pass on the 3% average cost of processing to their clients, that actually winds up being a lot more than a 3% difference in that merchant's profit, right? So like, let's say you have a merchant that's been profiting 3% or 30% rather, in terms of what they take in, and they've got a 30% profit margin. Okay. If they're able to pass on or get someone else to pay for that 3% that's essentially coming off the top for them, that's not a 3% difference in profit margin. That 3% is actually going to be like 10% increase in profits for the merchant, right? So those little processing costs can certainly add up, especially in high volume merchants. Okay, so again, every card sale costs the merchant roughly 2 to 4%, or that's what the processing cost is going to be. Surcharge, dual pricing, cash discount are ways to shift that cost from the merchant to the consumer. Again, the thinking is that, hey, if I just add a little bit to what the consumer pays, it's probably not going to affect their purchasing decision. It might, but it probably is not going to affect their purchasing decision. It's probably not going to cause them to stop coming to me. It's probably not going to stop them from purchasing with me today, right? And that little bit that they're going to be paying extra is going to add up and create a significant difference in my profit as a merchant and take home at the end of the day. This is a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings around kind of the passing off the card processing fees to the clients. We definitely talk to a lot of merchants that feel like it just ain't right, stuff like that. You definitely talk to consumers, and consumers certainly don't like it either. They don't like having to pay extra. I guess at the end of the day, a lot of times it comes down to math and numbers. So it's like, does the merchant feel like they're actually going to be losing enough clients here so that it's a bad business decision for them? And for some of them, they actually feel like, business decision or not, I just don't feel right about this, right? There's probably certain markets where this hits harder than others. I have a lot of, I'll say, kind of more old-fashioned business owners, mom and pop businesses are around Ryan, and I talk to a lot of people here, and they're just like, Ryan, I just don't feel right about it. It's not the right way to do business. So, again, not passing judgment on it either way. Tons of people are doing this, and it's a great way for the business to profit more. Also, for you as merchants or for you as agents, it's also going to be very difficult for other agents to come in and kind of undercut you on price if you've already, for the most part, zeroed out the cost of processing to the merchant, right? So there are some agents that feel very strongly about this type of pitch for a few reasons. It's going to help the merchant keep more of their money. It's also going to help the agent probably create a stickier merchant that's going to stick around a long time because other agents aren't going to be able to come in and undercut them because they've already, for the most part, zeroed it out. And I say zeroed out, again, don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here. There's probably still going to be some monthly costs or whatnot. But again, you're significantly reducing the cost. All right. So again, three ways to shift the cost. So how is this done? You've got surcharging, cash discount, and dual pricing. So just generally speaking, surcharging is where a fee is added at checkout when the customer pays by the card. Okay, the listed price stays the same, right? So if it's a $10 item, right, and then there's a 3% surcharge, right? So that the listed price is $10, and when they go to pay, it's $10 plus the 30-cent surcharge, and the total is $10.30. Okay, so the listed price, the advertised price, stays the same, and the customer pays more. Okay, cash discount. Again, a lot of this is going to feel like semantics, but it's important so that you're using the right language. Cash discount, you've got a situation where the listed price is the card price. Okay, so if it's $10, it's $10, right? And then when they go and if they decide to pay cash, then it's actually supposed to show that, okay, it was $10 and then now you've got a roughly 30-cent discount, right? And so you're now going to pay $9.70. Okay, so you actually get a discount, right? So again, surcharge, you're being charged the extra, 30 cents in that case for paying by card versus this is our price $10 and you're actually getting a discount. It's actually going to show on the receipt you're getting a discount for paying. Okay, dual pricing, which a lot of people are a fan of, it actually presents it all right there together, right? This is the card price, this is the cash price, okay? And the customer chooses which one they're going to go with. A lot of people like that model because it feels like we're not surcharging you. It's not about discounts. It's like, hey, this is your menu of options, and you go ahead and choose whichever one you want. And if you choose to pay by card, you realize that you're choosing to pay more than you would have paid with cash. All right, so surcharge, model number one. Extra fee, like we said, is added at the point of sale when the customer pays with a credit card. The shelf or menu price doesn't change. Credit just pays a little bit more at checkout. It applies to credit cards only, should not be applied for debit situations or with like prepaid cards. Those are supposed to be treated like cash. Okay, fee is added on top, and this carries the heaviest compliance load. We'll talk a little bit more about compliance load in just a second. All right, so right here is an example of what Valor PayTech has for surcharging. So forgive me, it's a little bit fuzzy in here, but if you can maximize a screen or if you can read, you can see or read in where it's colored, you can see that there's in green, there's an amount is $10 and then the surcharge is very clearly added 30 cents and then you can see the total is $10.30 versus a debit transaction on the right. You can see the amount is just $10. There's no mention of a surcharge because there's no surcharge. Okay, and just the total is $10. Okay, so pretty simple and straightforward, pretty clear in terms of, hey, you're paying extra because of paying by card. All right, with regard to surcharging, this is an infographic from Visa. There's a URL down there at the bottom. If you all want any of the documents that we're going to mention today, because we're going to show you a few today, just be aware that you can reach out to me and I'll just email it to you. Right? Okay, but again, right here you've got an infographic, merchant surcharging considerations and requirements before you decide to add a surcharge or checkout. You want to consider, what's my customer going to think? What do I need to disclose to the customers? What are my competitors doing? Again, these are just considerations that a merchant's going to have to, be aware of as they're trying to decide whether they want to go in the surcharging direction. Okay. According to this infographic, and again, this stuff changes, so full disclosure here, you may see something in a document that I pull up that's maybe not accurate as of like this minute. Certainly if you're watching this video later on delay, a lot of stuff can happen. This is an ever-evolving field, right? So don't take this as gospel, especially forever, because this definitely changes, okay? But as of the time of creating this, got this infographic here from Visa, and it talked about there are some states where you just can't do surcharging, right? So you need to be aware if you're in one of those states, okay? 30-day notice requirements, okay? So technically supposed to let's say you've boarded the merchant with TSYS, you're supposed to have 30 days notice if that's going to be changing and you're going to be doing surcharging, okay? Again, we've already talked a little bit about when can we be doing surcharging. Now, in terms of how much You can surcharge. Again, the rule is no more than the cost of acceptance. Surcharge must not exceed your cost of acceptance of the credit card. There are, Visa has their guidelines as to what the maximum is. MasterCard has their requirements as what the maximum can be. We'll talk a little bit more about how that all plays together here in just a second. Notice it may seem kind of like semantics here, but it's relevant. The language that's being used is that the surcharge must not exceed the merchant's cost of acceptance for the credit card. Doesn't necessarily mean what the actual interchange was. It's what is the merchant's not supposed to charge more than it costs them, but again, what it costs them can be, part of an agreement, right? So there's a lot of different directions that you can go there. Disclosures must be provided at the point of entry, and we'll talk a little bit more about disclosures and all that stuff. So you've got that there. I'm going to exit this really fast. I'm going to show you a couple other things. Okay, so Visa does have a very long rules document. You can see, I don't know if you can zoom in here, but this is a 923 page document with product and service rules, right? So if you ever have trouble falling asleep at night, I recommend strongly to pull up Visa's 923 page rules and regulations, and it'll put you to sleep right away. But I can get you a copy of this too if you want. I went ahead and scanned down to a relevant portion of it that we're covering today. And you can see credit card, surcharge, disclosure requirements, Canada, US, and US territories. I'm not going to get into all of this, but you can see it does start talking about, hey, what you have to do for face-to-face transactions or e-commerce transactions or mail order transactions or phone and all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff in here. Now, again, with you all being agents with Host, or if you're thinking about becoming an agent with Host, a benefit of working with us, of course, is we'll help you navigate and figure out what needs to be done. Okay, these are Visa's rules. MasterCard has a much shorter rule document here that I can get you here. We're not going to go through all the rules there. There's also an FAQ here too, right? So if you want to get your hands on the FAQ, or if you want to get your hands on any of this, any of these documents, again, just reach out to me or your relationship manager, and we can help share those with you. All right, so let's come on back here. All right, so we talked about surcharging. Let's talk about cash discount. Okay, so we already said cash discount is when the listed price is the card price. Okay, customers who are going to pay with cash receive a discount off of that price. Okay, so everyone sees the posted price. You're not going to call it the card price, but that's effectively what it is. That's the price. The price is the price, and cash payers are going to pay less. Okay, it's framed, and again, this is kind of semantics. We talked about this. It's framed as a reward as opposed to a penalty for using cards. A lot of people like this because, the surcharge, for many people, it feels like the customer's being penalized for using a card. In this case, there's no penalties, so to speak, semantically speaking. We only have a price, or we have a reward for the clients or customers if they choose to pay with cash. Okay. A true cash discount is a real, clearly shown discount from a posted price. All right, so going back to Valor here, again, you've got an example of what Valor calls their true cash discount program. Okay, so again, it's a little fuzzy. Apologies if you're unable to see it really clearly, especially those of you on mobile right now. But you can see you've got the terminal, and then you've got the credit sale, and then you've got the cash sale on the right. Okay, so for the credit sale, it's showing, hey, there's a $10.30 is what it is what it was, the amount of the transaction, and there's zero discount, right? So hey, you're not being penalized, but there's no discount. We know that the $10.30 would have been the $10 with the 30 or the 3% factored in, but again, that was the price, $10.30, no discount, but no harm. Versus over on the cash sale, you got $10.30 and the discount is 30 cents, and the customer feels like, hey, I got a little discount by paying cash, so I feel really good about what just happened here. All right, dual pricing. So again, difference here with dual pricing is, like the name suggests, we're going to actually see both prices, a cash price and a card price shown side by side, or you'll see in a second on top of each other. The customer sees both up front, they decide what they're going to pay. Both prices clearly visible. Transparency is really important, and a lot of people like this model the best because it's very transparent, and the customer feels like it's on them and their decision making as to what they're going to pay, as opposed to the semantics around penalties or rewards. Okay. And again, right here, you've got, if you take a look in the middle on the terminal, you've got the card price, and you've also got EBT or cash price, and EBT being treated, of course, as like cash. Okay. So we've got full disclosure here. Hey, what are you going to do? How are you going to pay for this? Are you going to choose to pay by card and it's going to be 1030, or are you going to use one of these others and it's going to be 10? Okay. In this case, if you look on the right, it was 1030. They obviously chose to pay by card. You can see right there it was an Amex transaction, and they didn't get the EBT or cash price because they chose to pay by card and Amex. Okay. And so the total was there. They didn't get a discount, but hopefully they're not as mad about it because it was their decision in terms of how to pay. All right. So some key rules for dual pricing and cash discount. Okay. The display is what's going to keep you compliant. For dual pricing and cash discount, for those two models, you need to be clearly showing kind of both the cash and the card prices side by side. That's really the only way to kind of truly be compliant. Okay. You don't want to keep one price and tack on a hidden fee at the register. That's going to cause you to be toying with non-compliance. Okay. The old move of just keeping the menu the same and quietly adding a fee at the register causes compliance problems. It's discouraged and it can lead to fines and all that stuff that nobody wants. Okay. So again, the simple test is if the customer cannot see both prices before they pay, you're going to have a problem. Okay. So a few guardrails for you to be aware of if you're going to dip your toe in here. Okay. So you definitely need to know that for these, we're talking about for the discounts and whatnot, or for rather for the surcharges, or for charging more for one type of transaction than another. We're talking about credit cards where it's going to be that heightened cost. Okay, this is not going to apply for debit or prepaid situations. The 30-day notice requirement. Technically, there's a 30-day notice requirement if you have an existing merchant that's going to then be shifting over to surcharge, there's going to be a notice requirement. You want to get that notice in quickly. And again, if you're boarding with us, we can help you with that. Disclosure is going to be very key. We'll talk a little bit more about the different types of signage, but again, this is also something that can vary greatly depending upon the area that you're located, right? So we're not going to say we can't just give you one thing that's going to be applicable for everyone in terms of what's going to work for notice. But there's going to usually need to be clear signage at the door and at the register, plus a surcharge needs to be itemized on the receipt. In terms of caps for surcharging, this is where it gets a little bit weird. Technically, Visa caps surcharging at 3%. MasterCard technically caps it at 4%. But in practice, in the real world, you're not going to be separating out a Visa transaction versus a MasterCard transaction. So Visa's 3% kind of controls when we're talking about surcharging. Okay. But again, here we're talking about surcharging. We're not talking about dual pricing or cash discount, right? In those situations where you can itemize, hey, this is the card price, or this is the card price and this is the cash price, that 3% is not something that controls because it's not a surcharging situation. It's kind of a dual disclosure, dual pricing situation. Okay. All right. We just talked about this a little bit. Actually, we pretty much covered this in its entirety just now, right? So again, Visa's capping at 3, MasterCard's 4. However, Visa's likely creating a glass ceiling here since you're not going to usually break out or separate Visa transactions versus MasterCard transactions. Okay, so it's going to have to usually be at 3% there if you're doing surcharging. Now, in terms of disclosure at the door, there's usually going to need to be signs at the entrance where the customer comes in, at the register, and on the first screen. If they're paying online, there's going to have to be something at checkout disclosing, and then on the receipt, the surcharge itemized as its own line on the receipt is going to be required. Again, the spirit of the rule here is the customer, this is always, whenever there's rules, it's usually a consumer protection situation. And so again, we're protecting the consumer by not surprising them with anything. We want them to be want it to be very clear what they're paying for. Okay. Now, the rules shift. Your job is to know what they do. So again, surcharging is limited or restricted in certain states, and those lists change, right? So what we're talking about today is not blanket applicable to everyone. This is good general knowledge for you to have, for all of you to have. And then with your individual states, talk to a relationship manager, reach out to me, and we'll figure out what has to be done to make sure your merchant in your specific area is going to be compliant. Okay. The card networks can differ in their fine prints, and be aware those rules change over time. You could ask me to send you that PDF with Visa's 900 and whatever page rules, and that thing's going to get updated for sure, right? So everything in there is going to change over time, or a lot of the stuff's going to change over time. Okay. Even official sources don't always list the same restricted states, right? So there can be a lot of different information out there. It could be easy to get wrong information from one source as opposed to another. So make sure you talk to your RM, make sure you talk to us so that we can help you stay compliant. Again, you're not going to want to memorize a list that's going to get outdated every quarter. Okay. So you can lean on us. You can lean on host, your relationship managers for all this. All right. Mistakes that we see a lot. We've got surcharging on debit or prepaid cards. When this is not going to be allowed, and so we got to be sure this isn't happening. Okay. No signage. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, your merchant's going to have to be the one responsible for putting up the signage usually, but you need to make sure that you're letting them know that at least they have the information that they need to stay compliant. Okay. They can't be hiding fees in a receipt. Okay. Just add a fee and keep the menu the same. So again, this may require, depending upon which program they're going to go with, the merchants may actually have to update their menus, right? They can't, may seem easy to be like, okay, well, we've got a menu that says one thing and we'll just add the stuff. But if you've got conflicting advertising and conflicting menus, that can be a problem. And again, we've talked many times, assuming one state's rules are going to apply everywhere is a mistake. We got to get specific to your area, make sure we're compliant in your area. All right, so again, a little bit about what's right around the corner here. Today was the foundation. Next week, we're going to be looking at the technical back end of things, which processors and terminals, are actually going to work with these various programs. Not all of them will do all of the programs here, especially properly. Okay, so be sure you're here for that so we can make sure that we get you the information on which devices and which network processors you're going to be pitching when you're out in the field. And we're going to go over a little bit of debit nuance. We talked a little bit about that today. Part 3 is going to be on selling this. Okay, going to be excited about that. How do you pitch this thing? Right. So now that I have the information, what's the best way to actually get merchants to sign up for this? Especially those that maybe don't feel right about it. Okay, so we're going to go through that. And again, I think there's a lot of, I personally don't love paying the little surcharge, but especially now that I'm in this industry, I get it. It makes a significant difference for the merchants, right? So selling it again, some of them, maybe you don't even have to feel like you're selling. Maybe it's just providing the clarity for them to make an informed decision about what's going to be right for their business. Okay. So again, the things you should be walking away with today is understanding the 3 different ways to shift that roughly 3% off of the merchant. For dual pricing and cash discount, which are going to be different than surcharge, we got to show both prices. Okay. For the guardrails, again, credit only, 30-day notice, cap the cost of acceptance for surcharge, and clear disclosure. And the rules move, verify before you pitch. Lean on us, reach out to us on any specific questions. Let's make sure that when you go out there and you give information, you're giving the right information so you can win the deal.